The rain never stopped in the lower part of Vorik City. Dirty water ran through the narrow streets like veins of sorrow. Neon signs blinked in broken rhythm, painting colors over broken lives. People walked fast, heads down, trying not to look at anyone. Kale was packing up his stall when he saw her. She stood in the shadows, wet, shaking, barely covered in thin fabric. She didn't look older than 20, though alien features were hard to guess. Her skin had a faint glow under the neon, and silver patterns shimmered on her arms. He looked away, assuming she was just another night seller. This part of the city had many, and he didn't judge anymore. But she didn't move or call out to others. She only watched him, silently. Eyes locked onto him like she was choosing something. Kale lifted a crate and turned to leave, but she stepped forward, blocking his path. Her voice was quiet, almost lost in the rain. "Use me just once, human. That's all I ask." He froze, unsure if he heard her right. The words didn't come with seduction. They came like a plea. He looked into her eyes, wide, tired, and filled with something deeper than hunger, shame, fear, hope, all mixed. Together, Kale slowly set the crate down. "I don't buy people," he said, voice low. She shook her head quickly. "No money, no contract, just one night. I need shelter. Just once." Kale frowned. "Why me?" She hesitated, then said, "You didn't laugh when you saw me." That hit him harder than he expected. He looked around. Others stared. Some smirked, some ignored her. Kale rubbed his tired eyes, thinking hard. He had a spare room in the back of his workshop. No one would care. No one would ask. "Come on," he said finally, turning without waiting. She followed quietly, bare feet splashing in the rain. He led her through alleys, into an old storage unit that smelled of oil and metal. The lights inside flickered, warm compared to the streets. Kale tossed her a towel, then pointed to a cot in the corner. "You can sleep there. No one comes here at night." She took the towel slowly, like she wasn't used to kindness. "I'll only stay until morning," she said, voice shaking. He nodded. "Fine by me." He turned to leave, but she asked, "Why aren't you touching me?" Kale looked back, confused. "I'm not here to use you," he said simply. She stared at him like he was speaking a forgotten language. "No one's ever said that," she whispered. He sat on an old chair and sighed. "Look, I've seen enough pain in this city. I'm not adding more." She sat on the cot, curling up slowly. "I don't even remember my name," she said quietly. "They took it when they branded me." Kale looked over, confused. "Branded?" She nodded, turning slightly to show the back of her neck. Under the towel, a faint blue glow marked her skin, strange lines and symbols. "That means property," she said. Owned. Kale felt anger rise in his chest. "Who did this to you?" She didn't answer, just curled tighter. "I ran away, but they'll find me." "They always do. Not tonight," Kale said, standing up. "I'll keep watch." Her eyes widened. "Why?" He shrugged. "Because someone should have done it for you long ago." For a long time, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "Can I stay near you? Just not alone." He nodded and moved a blanket to the floor near her cot. He didn't touch her, didn't ask for anything. They just sat in silence. The storm outside howling like it wanted to break through. She watched him as he dozed off, his arm resting on an old crate. No chains, no hunger in his eyes, no commands. She felt something in her chest, something warm and painful. Hope. When the lights dimmed and the storm calmed, she whispered into the dark. "My name was Leary." Kale didn't answer. He was already asleep, but a faint smile touched her lips. Someone knew her name again, and in that small, broken place. For the first time in years, she closed her eyes and slept without fear. The morning light in Vorik City was not warm. It was pale and gray. Filtering through the cracks in the metal shutters like a ghost, Cale opened his eyes slowly, back stiff. From sleeping on the cold floor, he turned his head. Leary was still asleep. Curled on the cot like a child, her arms were wrapped around herself, face half buried in the blanket he gave her. For a moment, he thought maybe she had dreamed everything. But then he saw the mark glowing faintly on the back of her neck. It pulsed like it was alive, a dull blue symbol with lines stretching into her spine. Not a tattoo, not paint, something old, something dangerous. Cale rose quietly, trying not to wake her. But as he moved toward his workbench, she flinched and sat up fast. Her eyes were wide, breathing quick. He lifted both hands. Easy. It's just me, she blinked, then relaxed slowly. Her body still tense. I didn't mean to sleep so long, she said, voice soft. You needed it, Cale replied, handing her a small can of heated protein. Soup. She took it with both hands, fingers shaking as if even kindness was hard to hold. Cale hesitated, then asked, that mark. What is it? She looked away, eyes locked on the floor. I told you, it means property. She said, the syndicate puts it on girls like me. Cale frowned. It's more than just a symbol. Leary nodded. It's fused to the nervous system. They can track me, shock me, control me if they want. He clenched his fists, rage rising in his chest. And they did this to you. She nodded again, silent. Cale sat beside her, his voice low. Can it be removed? I don't know, she whispered. Some say yes, but it's risky if it means your freedom. We'll find a way, he said firmly. She looked at him with tired eyes. You keep saying we like I matter. Cale leaned forward. You do? She froze, eyes wide again. No one had said that to her before. Not without wanting something. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her fingers touched the side of her neck, covering the glowing mark like it was shame. I can't stay here long, she whispered. They'll find me. I know, Cale replied, but you're not running alone this time. They sat in silence for a while. The only sound was the distant hum of city traffic above. Then Cale stood and opened a hidden drawer under his workbench. Inside was an old, dusty datapad and a small black device with a blinking red light. Leary looked up, curious. What's that? Something from my old days, he said, before I became a vendor. He powered up the datapad, fingers moving fast over the screen. I used to run security routes for underground transports. I know someone who might help. Leary tilted her head. Help with what? Finding someone who can remove that mark. Her breath caught, and her hand gripped the soup tighter. You'd do that? For me? Cale looked her straight in the eyes. I don't help people because they're useful, Leary. I help them because someone once helped me. A message came through the pad. One word. Possible. Bring her. Dangerous. Cale shut the device and looked at her. There's a rogue medic. Lives past the eastern zone. Outside the walls. Leary's eyes widened. That's wasteland. Cale, it's lawless. He nodded. But it's the only place the syndicate won't look right away. She sat quietly, the soup forgotten in her hands. Then she asked, do I even deserve this? Cale answered without hesitation. Yes. She blinked fast, trying to hide the tears that rose. Then she whispered, thank you. Cale packed quickly. Food, water capsules, a small plasma pistol. Leary stood near the door, her feet bare. Again, arms wrapped around herself, Cale looked down and handed her a pair of boots. Not the best fit, but better than cuts. She took them, and for the first time, she smiled, just a little. The light hit her face in a way that made her look almost human. As they stepped outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray, heavy with secrets. Cale glanced at Leary, walking beside him with unsure steps. She was fragile, scarred, and terrified, but there was strength in her, hidden deep, waiting to be seen. And he had already made a silent promise. They would burn every cage that held her, even if it meant losing everything. The city faded behind them, replaced by broken fences, half-dead trees, and long stretches of dirt that led into the wastelands. Cale's transport bike was old but strong, built for rough ground and rougher days. Leary sat behind him, arms tight around his waist, her body shaking with each bump. She had never left the syndicate zones before. Freedom didn't exist outside those walls, but now she was crossing the edge with a human she barely knew, and somehow she trusted him more than anyone she had ever met. They stopped under a rusted overpass to rest. Cale pulled out water capsules and a dry ration bar, breaking it in half and giving her a piece. She bit into it slowly, her hands still twitching from nerves. "How far is this, doctor?" she asked. Cale wiped sweat from his brow. "2 more sectors east, if the old roads are still safe." Leary leaned back against the concrete wall, eyes scanning the sky. "You really think she can remove the brand?" Cale didn't answer at first. Then he said, "I don't know, but she's the only one crazy enough to try." He didn't tell her the full truth. Vexa, the rogue medic, wasn't just anyone. She used to work for the syndicate. Back then, she made brands like Leary's. Now she lived in hiding, full of guilt and secrets. If anyone could undo the damage, it was her. Leary reached up and touched the glowing mark on her neck. "It still burns sometimes," she whispered. Cale turned to her, voice soft. "You don't have to hide it anymore." She gave him a broken smile. "I've hidden it for so long, I don't know how to stop." They rested for an hour, then rode again. The land grew wilder, dry grass, scattered metal bones from old wars, and no signs of life, but Cale kept going, his grip firm, his eyes sharp. He had survived in worse places, and he wasn't letting her fall back into the shadows. At sunset, they reached an abandoned fuel station. Cale guided the bike behind a crumbling wall and made a small camp. Leary sat beside the fire, legs pulled up to her chest. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was full of thoughts neither had words for. After a while, Leary whispered, "They told me I was nothing." Cale didn't respond right away. Then he said, "They lied." "I was born in a breeding camp," she continued, eyes on the fire. "Raised to be sold, trained to obey, punished when I asked questions." Cale's jaw tightened. Leary smiled without joy. "When I escaped, I didn't run because I believed I was worth saving. I ran because I was tired of being touched by hands that didn't care." Cale looked at her gently. "And now?" She looked up at him, the firelight flickering in her eyes. "I still don't know what I am," she said. "But when you said my name, I felt like I existed." He moved closer, not to touch her, but just to sit near. "You're Leary," he said again, slow and clear. "You're not a thing. You're not property. You're someone." A single tear rolled down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away. Embarrassed, Cale didn't mention it, didn't stare. He just threw another piece of wood into the fire. That night, she didn't ask for space. She curled beside him under the old tarp, not for warmth, for safety, and Cale, without thinking, rested a hand lightly over hers, not claiming, not controlling, just letting her know he was still there. They woke early, packed quickly, and rode through the last stretch of the wasteland. Dust storms hit them hard and fast. Visibility dropped, and for a moment, Cale couldn't see 5 feet ahead. Then, through the haze, he spotted a blinking red beacon, half buried in the ground. He stopped the bike and lifted Leary down. "That's her signal," he said. "She's close." Together, they walked to a broken transport container, half covered in dirt and vines. Cale knocked 3 times, paused, then knocked twice more. A voice from inside called out, "If you brought trouble." "Turn around, no trouble," Cale shouted back. "Just a girl who wants her name back." The door hissed open, and an alien woman with cybernetic arms and glowing red eyes stared at them. Her expression unreadable, her scars deep. She looked at Leary, then at Cale. "You really want me to?" touch that brand?" she asked. Kale nodded. "She's not going back." Vexa studied Leary for a long moment. Then she stepped aside. "Then come in. But if she dies, that's on you." Leary stepped forward slowly, her heart pounding. Kale followed close behind. And the door slammed shut behind them. Inside the container. The walls buzzed with old tech and soft green lights. Vexa's hands moved fast as she scanned Leary with cold instruments and broken machines. Kale stood near the entrance, tense, watching every move. Leary sat on a metal chair, her back exposed, the brand glowing faintly under the scanner's pulse. Vexa didn't say much, only grunted now and then. After 10 long minutes, she stepped back and sighed. "They used a rare model of neural brand," she said. "Old syndicate tech, discontinued." Because it bonded too deeply with the host, Kale crossed his arms. "Can you remove it?" Vexa stared at Leary, then nodded slowly. "Yes. But it won't be clean. It'll hurt. And there's a chance her memory or senses may be damaged." Leary didn't even flinch. "If it means I'm free," she said softly, "I'll take the risk." Vexa tilted her head, impressed. "Most people cry just hearing that." Leary looked down. "I've cried enough." Kale stepped closer. "How long will it take?" Vexa replied, "1 day, maybe less. I need to prep the tools, calibrate the stabilizer." She turned to Leary. "You'll have to rest, eat, and not move until I begin." Leary nodded. But Kale saw it, the unease behind her calm voice. He knelt in front of her. "You don't have to prove anything," he said gently. "You've already survived more than anyone ever should." She reached out and touched his hand. "I just want to know what it feels like to wake up and not belong to anyone." But freedom would not come that easy that night. Kale went outside to fix the bike's overheated coolant tube. The wind had picked up, carrying sand and whispers from the deep desert as he worked. He noticed something strange, blinking lights in the far sky. Too steady to be stars, too quiet to be weather drones. His heart sank. He ran back into the bunker and grabbed Vexa. "Are you being tracked?" "Huh?" she frowned. "I've disabled all signals." "Why?" Kale opened a portable radar scanner and showed her 3 dots. Moving fast, syndicate, hunter drones. Coming straight toward them. Leary heard the alarm in their voices and stood up. "They're here, aren't they?" Kale nodded. "We have 10 minutes. Vexa grabbed her tools and hissed. "We can't move the setup. The equipment's too fragile." Kale turned to Leary. "We run. But the mark we run now, or you never get the chance to remove." Kale grabbed his pack and helped Leary onto the bike. Vexa stayed behind, covering the entrance with explosives. "Buy you time," she said, then closed the metal door. The bike roared through the wasteland, kicking up dust and sand. Behind them, distant hums grew louder. The syndicate drones were closing in. Kale pushed the engine hard, taking sharp turns, dodging debris and old wrecks. Leary clung to him tightly, eyes wide as glowing beams swept across the desert. "Can they shoot us down?" She yelled. "Yes," Kale replied, "but not if we stay out of open ground." He drove toward a canyon, a deep cut in the earth where old mining tunnels still remained. As they reached the edge, a drone fired. A plasma bolt struck the sand meters from them. The explosion sent the bike skidding sideways, almost flipping. Kale cursed and corrected the wheel just in time. "We're not making it far unless we hide," he muttered. He spotted a broken lift station by the cliff. Wallen drove straight toward it, diving off the bike with Leary just as the drone fired again. They rolled behind the metal base, heartbeats pounding. Kale drew his plasma pistol, eyes scanning the sky. "I'll draw them off," he said. Leary grabbed his arm. "No, if they take you, I'll be alone again." Kale looked at her. Then, "Let's not let them take either of us." He pulled out 2 signal jammers from his pack and activated them. The drones above blinked in confusion, their lights flickering as the signals scrambled. Cale took the chance, grabbed Leary's hand, and ran into the mine shaft. Inside was dark, silent, full of dust and forgotten machines, but they were hidden. And for now, they were alive. They sat against the tunnel wall. Breathing hard, Leary looked at him, eyes full of fear, anger, and something else, fire. "I'm done running," she said. Cale smiled through the dust. "Good," he replied. "Then let's start fighting back." The mine tunnels were cold and dry. The walls were cracked from old blasts, and the air tasted like dust and metal. Cale led Leary deeper into the dark, his flashlight shaking slightly in his hand. Behind them, the sounds of the Syndicate drones. Faded, blocked by layers of stone and old iron, they walked in silence, each step echoing like a memory. Leary was quiet, her face pale. The chase had drained her strength. But something else pressed on her now, the weight of what waited ahead. Freedom, or death, or something in between. After nearly an hour, Cale stopped at a collapsed mining elevator. He scanned a rusted panel and whispered a code to Leary's. Surprise! A hidden hatch opened behind the wall. Stairs led down into the earth, dim lights flickering as they descended. "What is this place?" she asked, voice thin. "An old smuggler route," Cale said. "I used it years ago when I was someone else." They reached a sealed metal door. Cale knocked twice, then once, then twice again. Moments later, the door opened with a hiss. Vexa stood there, eyes narrowed, arms covered in blood and oil. "You made it," she muttered. Stepping aside, "I see you didn't bring the drones." "That's a surprise." Cale helped Leary inside, and Vexa guided them into a small underground chamber. Lights buzzed overhead, and medical tools floated gently in magnet trays. The place smelled of medicine, chemicals, and fear. Vexa looked at Leary and said flatly, "Sit." Leary obeyed without a word, climbing onto the surgical bench. Cale stood beside her, but Vexa shook her head. "You'll distract her," she said. "If you really care, wait outside the door." Leary reached for Cale's hand before he could leave. Her grip was tight, desperate. "I'm scared," she whispered. Cale leaned down, forehead touching hers. "I'll be right here," he promised. "You're not alone." Vexa gave him a cold look, but said nothing more. Cale stepped outside, heart pounding like a war drum. Inside, Vexa began her work. She injected a series of dull blue liquids into Leary's neck and spine. Her fingers moved quickly, setting up scanners, tools, and small microsaws. Leary's body shook as the chemicals burned through her nerves. Vexa placed metal discs around the glowing brand, connecting wires to her main terminal. "You'll feel like fire's crawling under your skin," she said. "But you must not move, not even a little." Leary gritted her teeth and nodded, her eyes locked on the ceiling. Tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Outside the room, Cale paced the hall. Every minute felt like an hour. Every faint sound made him flinch. He thought of her smile, her quiet strength. The way she said his name, like it meant something. He had known many faces in his life, soldiers, smugglers, liars, killers, but none had broken his heart like Leary. Not because she was weak, but because she had survived when no one should have. Suddenly, a high-pitched noise echoed from inside the chamber. Cale burst through the door, ignoring Vex's shout. Leary was convulsing. Her body arched, the brand glowing violently. "Get out!" Vexa yelled. "She's at the edge." Cale ran to her side anyway, grabbed her hand. "Leary," he shouted, "stay with me, please. Stay with me." Her body trembled, teeth clenched, eyes rolling. But his voice reached her. Somehow, she gasped. Then screamed, then went completely still. The glow on her neck flickered, then faded. The mark, once bright and alive, was now just a dull scar. Vexa pulled away, her hands shaking, sweat on her face. she's breathing. She said, I got it out. But it took everything, every damn trick I knew. Kale held Leary's hand gently, her fingers twitching. Her eyes fluttered open, tired, but clear. He smiled, tears in his eyes. You did it, he whispered. You're free. She reached for his face. Her voice like a thread. I felt it. Leave me, she said. I felt. Light, he leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers again. You're not theirs anymore. Vexa stepped back, letting them have their moment. She cleaned the tools in silence, eyes dark with memory. She had made so many like Leary, branded. So many lives, but tonight she had undone one, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Later, Leary slept in a warm bed, covered in soft blankets for the first time in her life. Kale sat beside her, holding her hand as if it were made of stars. And in that underground room, far from syndicate chains, a girl who was once a number had become someone again. Asterisk, the wind outside Vex's bunker had changed. It wasn't just carrying dust anymore. It carried something sharper. Leary stood in the open morning light, her hair lifted by the breeze, her face calm but fierce. The mark on her neck was gone, replaced by a pale scar. It no longer glowed, no longer whispered control. She was free now. And she could feel it in every breath she took. Kale came out from the shadows, holding a wrapped cloth in his hand. She turned, and he smiled softly. For you, he said, unwrapping the cloth, to reveal a simple, handmade scarf. It was dark red, stitched with care. The kind of gift made, not bought, to cover the scar. He added. She touched it gently, but then shook her head. No, she whispered. I want the world to see it. He nodded. Proud Leary wasn't the same girl who had whispered, use me just once. In the rain, she had found herself, and now she was ready to go back to the city, back to the place that once tried to break her. Vexa gave them a battered transport crawler, slow but armored. You'll be tracked, she warned, but you'll make it to the gates. Kale helped Leary into the seat, his pistol charged and strapped to his leg. Leary wore a cloak over her thin frame, but her eyes burned with quiet strength as they rolled toward the city. The towers of Varix grew taller in the distance. The air smelled of metal and smoke again. Leary watched the buildings rise, every turn of the crawler's wheels pushing her closer to the ghosts of her past. She remembered the streets, the corners where she hid, the windows where others watched her suffer. And now she was going back, not to beg, but to end it. They reached the outer checkpoint by sunset. A bored guard stepped forward, raising his scanner lazily. But when Leary pulled back her hood and stared at him, his face went pale. You're? She stepped closer. I'm no one's, she said coldly. Open the gate. He didn't argue. The gate hissed open, and they entered the city that once caged her. Kale parked the crawler near the lower market district. Everything looked the same. The neon lights, the garbage-strewn alleys, the greedy eyes, but something felt different now. It wasn't the city that had changed. It was her. Leary stepped out alone, walking slowly through the streets. People looked at her. Some recognized her. Some whispered her name like it was a ghost. She didn't hide her face. She didn't lower her head. She walked like she belonged. They passed the building where she had once stood in the rain, the same corner where she'd offered herself for shelter. Kale stood silently, watching as she paused and touched the wall. Her fingers shook slightly, but she didn't cry. I died here, she whispered. Now I'm here to bury that version of me. Then they walked together, toward the heart of the district, the Syndicate Den. A tall building of black glass and electric gates, guarded by armed drones and thugs. Kale handed her a small device, a short-range detonation switch. She nodded, then stepped forward. Where do you think you're going? A guard barked. She didn't answer. She only pressed the button. The explosion shook the ground. the blast coming from the fuel tanks hidden in the delivery zone Cale rigged earlier. Screams followed. Lights burst. Alarms cried out. Chaos erupted. In the middle of it all, Leary walked into the flames, unharmed, unafraid, unstoppable, inside. Syndicate members ran in panic. But when they saw her, they froze. Some fell to their knees. Some turned and fled. No one dared touch her. She reached the center office, where the old handler sat, the one who branded her, his face twisted in fear. "You're supposed to be gone," he spat. "You belong to us." She stepped closer and said only one word. "No." Then she placed a data chip on his desk. Full of evidence, faces, names, systems, Cale had helped her gather everything. The kind of evidence that would bring the syndicate down from the inside. "You won't die today," Leary said. "You'll watch everything you built fall." She turned and walked away. The building behind her burned, sirens screaming louder than the wind. Cale met her at the edge of the plaza. He offered his hand, and she took it. Together, they vanished into the crowd, leaving behind a firestorm. And a name that would never be forgotten. Leary, the girl who was once used, now the woman who set herself free. Months passed, the city remembered the fire. The syndicate fell one piece at a time. Names exposed, secrets spilled, systems destroyed. And the name Leary was whispered in the streets. Not as property, not as prey, but as power. She had not returned to rule. She had returned to be free. And then she disappeared, far from the city. In the quiet green hills beyond the old ruins, Cale and Leary built something simple. A small cottage made from salvaged metal and old wood. Solar lights hung from the roof, and wind chimes sang in the morning breeze. A garden grew beside the home. Full of food Cale learned to plant and Leary learned to love. They lived with silence. Not the kind that hurts, but the kind that heals. There was no schedule, no orders, no watchers. Only space to breathe, and time to become whole again. Leary no longer flinched in her sleep. She no longer woke up reaching for something to protect herself. She woke up beside Cale, with sunlight on her face, and sometimes she smiled before even opening her eyes. Children began to visit, orphans from the wrecked city. Abandoned by systems that never cared. Cale brought them food, but it was Leary they followed. She taught them how to grow things, how to laugh, how to survive. She gave them names, not numbers, not tags, but real names. Names full of meaning and love, names no one could take away. One day, Cale found her kneeling in the garden. She had drawn a symbol in the soil. It looked old, ancient, not human, not machine. "What is that?" he asked. She looked up at him, dirt on her fingers and a strange light in her eyes. "It's my true name," she said. "The one they erased when I was born." Cale crouched beside her. Curious, she smiled softly. "I found it in an old data record, before the camps, before the brand. I wasn't Leary. Not first. My name was Alari. It means born from starlight in the old tongue of my people." Cale said nothing, just took her hand and kissed it. She leaned into him and whispered, "You gave me Leary, and that saved me. But now, I want you to know who I really am." He smiled. "Then Alari it is." Later that evening, under the fading sky, the children sat around a small fire. Leary no Alari told them stories, not of pain, not of cages, but of courage, of light in the dark. She spoke slowly, her voice calm, her eyes warm. Cale stood behind her, watching. He saw how the children leaned in closer, how their eyes widened, how their small hearts filled with hope. They didn't know her past, not fully, but they knew she had come from pain. And still she stood strong. She wasn't just free now. She was guiding others toward freedom too, one child. A little girl with orange skin and large quiet eyes climbed into Leary's lap and asked, "Do we have to forget where we came from?" To be happy? Leary looked down at her, stroking her soft hair. No, she said gently. We don't forget. We grow past it. We remember, so it never happens again. The girl nodded slowly. Can I have a name too? Leary smiled. You already do. She whispered it into the girl's ear, and the child beamed. That night, after the fire died, Cale and Leary sat together on the porch. The stars above them shone like frozen tears in the sky. She leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, I never knew peace could feel like this. Cale wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. You earned it, he said. Every breath of it. She looked up at him, her eyes glowing in the starlight. Do you ever wonder why you stopped for me? Cale smiled. You didn't ask for mercy. You asked to be used. But what I saw was someone who deserved to be loved. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from something deeper. She didn't wipe them away this time. She let them fall. He kissed her forehead, then whispered, I didn't mark you as mine. You marked me as yours. And in the quiet, with the wind humming through the trees, Leary no, Alari finally believed it. She was never property. She was never a thing to be used. She had always been more. She had always been born from starlight, and now she belonged to no one except herself forever.